The captain put a record on the phonograph as his ship went under. Chopin's Funeral March. He stood on the deck and listened to it play while the Arctic ice closed over the hull. Then he stepped off onto the ice with 24 other people, 80 miles from the nearest land, in the middle of winter. 11 of them would not survive, and the man who was supposed to be leading them had walked away 4 months earlier and never came back. This is the wreck of the Karluk. In June 1913, the Karluk sailed north from British Columbia as the flagship of the Canadian Arctic expedition. She was not built for what she was about to do. Her captain said so before she ever sailed. Aboard were 25 people, 7-year-old Helen and Mugpee, who was 2. There were 29 dogs and a black cat the crew had named Nigeraurak. Leading the expedition was Vilhjalmur Stefansson. By the middle of August, the Karluk was locked in the ice. She wasn't moving. The ice had her. In late September, Stefansson announced he was leaving the ship to hunt caribou. He took 5 men, the best dogs, and a well-equipped sledge. He said they would be gone about 10 days. That night, a blizzard struck the coast. The ice broke and began to move, and the Karluk, with 25 people still aboard, drifted west. He never rejoined the ship. The people he left behind were now the responsibility of one man. Robert Bartlett was a Newfoundland sea captain. He knew ice. For 4 months, the Karluk drifted helplessly. Bartlett used every day of it. He had 10,000 pounds of supplies moved out onto the ice and a shelter built there from wooden food crates. He had Karluk sew fur clothing, proper Inuit winter clothing, for every single person on board. He had sledges made. He drilled the crew on what to do when the hull went. He was preparing them to abandon ship long before there was any ship to abandon. That preparation is the reason anyone survived at all. On the 11th of January, 1914, the ice finally won. The pressures split the Karluk's hull below the waterline. Water poured in. There was no saving her. The crew moved everything they could onto the ice, and as the ship settled, Bartlett stayed aboard alone, put Chopin's Funeral March on the ship's Victrola, and waited. At around 3:30 in the afternoon, the Karluk went down by the stern. It was pitch dark. In January, at that latitude, the sun does not rise at all. 25 people were left standing on drifting sea ice. No one on Earth who knew where they were. They called it Shipwreck Camp, a house of packing crates and a cluster of igloos built on a floe that was itself drifting. Then they began the march toward Wrangel Island, roughly 80 miles away. 80 miles sounds survivable. It was not that kind of 80 miles. The route crossed pressure ridges of broken ice, some of them higher than a house. Open leads of freezing seawater opened without warning. Temperatures dropped below -40. Bartlett sent an advance party of 4 men ahead to break trail and lay supplies. They were never seen again. No bodies, no camp, nothing. Then a second group broke away. 4 men, including 2 of the expedition's scientists, decided Bartlett's plan was wrong. They died too. Their remains were found on Wrangel Island years later. The rest reached Wrangel Island in March. What they found was a barren, frozen island with almost nothing on it. They were starving, frostbitten, and stranded. And critically, no one was coming, because no one knew they were alive. Inside the family's snow house, Karluk and Karuk kept their 2 daughters alive. The crew later credited both girls with being the one source of cheer. Helen looked after the ship's cat. The cat had been carried the whole way across 80 miles of pressure ridges in a sealskin pouch. Outside that shelter, the situation was collapsing. So Bartlett did the only thing left. He took a young Inuit hunter named Kako, 7 dogs and a sledge, and walked off the island toward Siberia. They crossed the frozen Chukchi Sea. Then they followed the Siberian coast, roughly 700 miles on foot in the Arctic spring. They made it. Bartlett reached Alaska, raised the alarm, and started fighting to get a ship north. Ice conditions blocked one rescue attempt after another. Months passed. On Wrangel Island, the situation deteriorated further. Starvation, illness, and a death that was never fully explained. On the 7th of September, 1914, nearly 8 months after the Karluk sank, a ship finally reached the island. 11 of the 25 were dead. Bartlett was decorated for the rescue. Among the survivors, he was regarded as the reason any of them came home. Stefansson faced harder questions. He had taken the strongest dogs, never especially attached to the Karluk's chances. He maintained for the rest of his life that the hunting trip was exactly what he said it was. There is no evidence proving otherwise. But 11 people died on the wrong side of that decision. And more than a century later, the question of what Stefansson knew has never been settled. Karluk, Helen, and Magpie all came home. They returned to northern Alaska and resumed their lives. The cat came home, too. Magpie, who had been 2 years old when the ship went down in the dark, and 3 by the time the rescue ship reached the island, grew up, married, raised a large family. She died in Anchorage on the 2nd of June 2008 at the age of 97. She was the last living survivor of the Karluk. If you want to see the next case history can't fully close, subscribe.